Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of a new Trekkie. My 5-year mission to search out Star Trek media, to seek out our fans and merchandise, to boldly go where no fan has gone before.
Greetings and salutations, how's everybody doing? So we're back to talking about Star Trek The Next Generation. And yes, I'm just getting used to being over here, because it's easy. This is also where I edit at times. But today, we're looking at 4 episodes in this case. Looking at the episode The Bonding, Booby Trap, The Enemy, and The Price. Let's look at the episode The Bonding first. What happened in this episode? Well, in this episode, an Enterprise crew member is killed in a tragic accident, leaving a newly orphaned young son to deal with her death. And honestly, I gotta say this episode does a great job in the fact it deals with, the human emotion of losing a loved one at a tragic event. And it does it very well. It does it respectfully, and I also think it also helps out other characters like Wesley, and the fact that it gives him more, more character, and the fact that, oh yeah, in the past we realized, say, Wesley was upset about the fact that his father died, yet Picard, was able to survive. And I also love the fact that we get a bit more character development for Worf, and the fact that we also realize, hey, he was an orphan, and at the same time, he is willing to reach out to Jeremy as almost say, older brother figure, and also help him in a Klingon ritual known as the Rusta.
What does that mean?
It honors the memory of our mothers. We have bonded, and our families are stronger.
That is taking over, basically is the personification of Jeremy's mom. That is honestly a great visual idea, and the fact that, even, when someone passes, say the one person that you're wanting to reach out to is that person that passed away.
It's all right. I'm here for the boy.
Lieutenant Worf to Captain Picard. Go ahead. Lieutenant Astor is in her quarters.
Repeat, Worf.
Lieutenant Astor is here, in her quarters with the boy.
And overall, I gotta say, this episode was fairly well written. The acting was very good. I gotta say, this episode is worth checking out. Let's go ahead and look at the next episode, which is episode Booby Trap. And what happened in this episode? Well, in this episode, the Enterprise discovers a centuries-old alien battlecruiser.
Readouts indicate we are being bombarded with a field of high-intensity radiation.
Shields up!
Captain, energy loss increasing to 5%.
Yellow alert.
And in a way, after it is activated, I believe an asteroid field is, caused, and eventually, there will be, a radiation, of the ship, and as well. And also, say, one of the side parts of the episode is in the fact that Geordi is trying to, he is trying to, basically he likes, one of the, his fellow crew member, but he's just trying to say, well, how do I, do this and all that. But eventually, he is having to get back to work and eventually, figure out, okay, how do we figure out how to fix the warp drive and all that. And eventually, he goes to the holodeck and has help from Dr. Lee Brahms. He basically helps him, and as well as helps him realize, say, hey, just be yourself around women, in a way. And I gotta say, I think this episode is pretty good in the fact that it's, although, say, the entire crew is a center point, it is also a good episode for Geordi. And the fact, it's a bit of a, he's having to come to the grip of, say, okay, this is what I know, this is what I'm having to do when it comes to working with the ship, having to do all of those kind of things. I mean, so overall, I think that's pretty good. Let's go ahead and look at an episode, well, The Enemy. In this episode, Geordi is trapped on a in-hospital planet, hazardous to human life, with a Romulan. The two adversaries must work together if they wish to survive. And on the board of the Enterprise, Worf is faced with a conflict between his duty as a Starfleet officer and his Klingon prejudice against Romulans. And Captain Picard must contend with a Romulan warbird intent on recovering their own personnel.
Way team has located a second man from your one-man ship. We're preparing to beam them to the Enterprise, after which, of course, we will return the survivor to you.
No acknowledgement, sir.
I gotta say, I think this episode is pretty great, when the fact that, say, the main idea of the episode is, in a way, although when it comes to, between, say, characters from Worf and Geordi, say, although Geordi is not showing prejudice to, Botra? I'm sorry, the Romulan who is with him on the planet. And although and I do have to say that, I kind of like the fact that we have more, more moments with Worf, and the fact that his character is, saying, hey, yeah, I'm a Klingon, but at the same time, I'm not, there's, a limit and I'm willing to work with Romulans, but it's just, my family was killed by Romulans, there's a bridge too far. And I also think that in a way it also could be, although at the end of the episode, Picard is having to, say, hey, I'm willing to trust this, Romulan in the case of Tomlik.
Let's just say my faith would be strengthened by a gesture from you, such as powering down your disruptors.
Disruptors powering down.
Thank you.
I probably butchered that name, I apologize. And, he basically goes, say, hey, who's gonna make the first move? And, because during, say, the episode, the Romulan that Worf was, supposed to donate, or do a transfusion, I believe, with, he passes away, and, yeah, the Romulan is basically saying, prepare for war, in a way. And overall, also got to say, the moments when we have Geordi on the planet and with the fellow Romulan. I think it works in the fact that, you know, it's like, you know, this typical stories of like when like enemy rivals and way having to work together, and anyway at the end of the episode end up become and having an understanding of one another.
You are my prisoner!
Right. Congratulations. Surely a strategic triumph for the Romulan Empire.
Stay there!
Shoes are getting full of sand. I just hate that, don't you?
So overall, I can say this episode is pretty great. I think the moments when we have Geordi, when he, like, you know, he's saying, like, hey, the visor helps me to see, and he's needing help to, like, from this the Romulan, it works out pretty well. Honestly, I got to think the makeup for this episode is pretty great as well. But overall, good episode. So let's look at the final episode in this episode, which is the episode The Price. In this episode, several groups, including the Federation, bid for rights to manage the entrance to a wormhole near a resource-poor planet. I gotta say, this episode is interesting in the fact that at the same time it also feels like a soap opera episode, and the fact that Deana Troi, she ends up having a bit of a romantic relationship with another telepath named Raul. There's even a moment where in the episode where Deana Troi is in a exercising clothes.
I feel completely out of control. Happy, terrified. But there's nothing rational about this. Who needs rational when your toes curl up?
And it feels like say, why did this episode suddenly become a like a housewife episode or something like that? And I do have to say that, you know, we have the return of the friend Geordi.
Eamon Goss, this is Deana Troi.
I have nothing to say to you, Raul.
Which is always fun. I always like them. And I like the look of the aliens in this episode. And the idea of, like, you know, like a, the telepath, I guess. Like, you know, using their, abilities instead of, like, for their own purposes.
Yes, it did put me in a conflict of interest, which I hope I have now resolved. Premier, I believe Raul has used your fear of continuing aggression between the Federation and its enemies to undermine our position.
In a way, I guess, in the case of Raul, and eventually Deana Troi is having to say, okay, Raul is basically trying to trick you into things. And, yeah, I gotta say this episode was strange. At the same time, it was entertaining. It was a bit of a longer one, I guess. But what are your thoughts on all four of these episodes?